Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy today to have Erin French. And Erin is a psychic medium, Akashic reader, and spiritual practitioner for over 30 years. With a deep, non dual foundation rooted in the Taoist teachings, Erin creates a grounded and heart centered container within which the Akashic records and messages from our guides and angels are revealed. During a deep period of awakening in 2019, Erin started receiving increasingly frequent messages from his own ancestors, as well as the constellation of spirit guides and higher angels, all of whom communicate through him with the sole purpose of encouraging our collective awakening. They have shared the deep truth of our unity with the universe, and that right now is a period of powerful transformation within the Earth's energy field. And I think we're all feeling that, and we all know that. Well, maybe
Yeah,
we don't all know that, but we're feeling it.
we're feeling it. Maybe, and there's some people that aren't, and that's okay too. But I think many of us, most of us, if we're listening to this podcast, if we're here today in this field, we are feeling
Yeah,
it for sure. Yeah.
yeah, for
Well, it's
sure.
great to
So
be
I'm
here.
so thank you for taking the time today, and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
I'm so excited about delve more into all you have learned in your twists and turns and your journey that you're talking about here. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe we'll just start out by you talking just a little bit about your background. I know that there's lots there, but how did
Yeah.
you come to this work that you do now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I came to this. I would say that this work found me.
Mm.
Um, I initially was a scientist. I lived all over the world studying birds and monkeys. For years after that, I was a chef, and then I got an MBA and became a corporate supply chain executive, became a COO, was flying around on private jets, doing corporate, negotiations in boardrooms with the biggest companies in America. And throughout all of that, there was ups and downs, but spirit and my guides and angels and ancestors kept coming to me and nudging me and guiding me in the direction of what I do now, which is support people in their awakening and give them guidance about the world beyond. And I resisted for so long. I resisted. I kept saying, no, 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 that's fine. I'll do this on the side. I'll do this on the side. But really, my sole purpose, what I'm doing in the world is more important, whatever. Um, And I was brought up, I live now in a small town of South Lake Tahoe up in the mountains of California. And I was working another corporate job and I got this offer to bring me up to this small town and work here. And then that job ended. And when that ended, I just knew that I wasn't here to take another supply chain job, another job as a CCOO. I was meant just to dive in and do this work and support people now in their awakening. And it's been an incredible journey. But the spirits first started, as my grandfather first came to me in the late 90s and communicated with me, and he was the first being that I recognized was clearly communicating to me. And then since then, it's been a steady unfolding. So it's been a long road to now.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you talk about this communication that you're having.
Yeah,
Um, Tell me a little bit more what that's like.
for sure. Um, initially it was my ancestors, my relatives who have passed, who wanted to communicate with me, and they really powerfully just pushed their agenda, pushed their thoughts, pushed their energy to me. So for me, primarily, it takes a variety of forms, but it's primarily claircognizance, where I get sort of pushed information and then I have to translate it into English to communicate it through. So for years, it was sort of my ancestors communicating with me. And I had one particular relative, my great grandmother, who was so insistent with her messages that I couldn't ignore them. And this was for years. And I'm grateful to her because, again, she was so insistent I couldn't ignore them. And so I had to communicate back with her and sort of talk to her enough to help her be resolved and let go of her hold on me energetically.
Mm.
And that whole process taught me about what that's like and opened me up to the possibility that there was, much, much, much more than I realized previously. And then messages started to come for other people. And so I would get these, I might have a friend or somebody, and I would get these messages from, maybe a spirit guide or an ancestor or someone who wants to intercede for them. And they would be really strong, like, hey, tell this person this. And sometimes I didn't even know the person like that well. They were a friend of mine, but maybe a casual friend. And I'd be like, I don't know if this is appropriate. Like, that's a really sort of intimate message from, that's, and I don't know them that well. And they kept pushing me these messages. And finally, I sort of started to trust them and pass them on. For years, I didn't actually. Finally, I trusted them and started to pass them on. And what I received from the people that received these messages was just deep gratitude and appreciation. And even like a year later, they would say, that message you gave me then was really impactful on my life, and I really appreciate you doing that. It helped change things for me. And I was like, oh, okay, these are not fully random. These are not just capricious. These are actually something useful or more important in some way. And so I opened up to that. And once I started to, one of the ways we connect is that the more we listen, the more we receive. It's really as simple as that, right? When we open up to listen, the more we receive. When we open up with gratitude, that's also gratitude opens the door and is sort of like the magic sprinkle that allows it to even expand in connection. And when we open up in gratitude from our hearts, as we do our own healing and open up our hearts with gratitude and say to all the beings beyond, I know you're real. I appreciate you. I want to hear you. I want to connect with you. Please help me and guide me. They're there around everyone to support us. There are levels of energy. From one way to speak about all this, right? These are all just frequencies of energy that have these vibrational energetics of messages that want to come through for us, as one way to speak about it. So when we just tune into various frequencies of experience, we can receive all the messages from those various frequency bands, just as like a radio or whatever can tune to different frequencies and get different stations. It's really energetically exactly like that. I mean, of course it's different, but energetically it's exactly like that.
Mm. Interesting. And I know for myself, going through grief, a lot of
Yeah.
those messages that I received from healers or psychic mediums were really comforting for me
Yes.
to hear those things. There was a lot of confirmation that came through those messages that Blaine was right there and he's been following me and
Mm,
guiding me along the way. And so I know that a lot of people have found a lot of comfort um, from
yes,
all kinds of messages
that's
from
right.
spirit. Yeah.
100%. And so much of what I do, there's a number of ways I support people, but when I do these mediumship and connections with ancestors sessions, so much of what people need, even if they don't know it, is simply confirmation that they're not crazy, simply confirmation that yes, you are receiving this. Yes, you are hearing these messages. Yes, you are being guided in this direction. Yes, this is your true path. So much. I mean, very often I do these sessions and I might not know, often I don't know very much at all about the people I'm working with. And when I pass through what's coming for them, people break down in tears of
Mhm.
gratitude and also just tears of being seen in a deep way. It's really fantastic. And to be really clear too, it's not anything that I'm doing at all. Really, it's that I'm getting out of the way. It's, the more that I'm not doing, the better it works. The more I just allow whatever to happen is happening. Um, so it's not, and this is 100% um, an ability, something that we can all practice if we choose. We can all lean into this. It's not special to me. I mean, again, I was a very rational scientist with a couple of master's degrees who thought the world was very deterministic. And then here I am doing this. It's just when spirit finds us and we open up to it, again, this is our birthright across everyone. there's not certain people have special abilities. That's not how it works. It's just, do we choose to tune in? Do we choose to listen? Do we choose to connect? And the more we do, and again, it's really important as well, through the grief, through our life path, through all of our shadow and pain, to do the work to open our hearts, to do the work to open our hearts. And even more so than that, the pain and grief that we experience creates these shortcuts, these wormholes, these cheat codes, which launch us directly into our heart space, even if it feels painful in the time. And by opening up and being grateful for the trauma, for the pain, for all of the hardship that we might face, we really exercise that heart muscle and open it up. And as we digest that and live through it and work through, our heart comes out of all of that in a different place where we're much more open to the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love the way you explain that, because one of the biggest emotions, and the one that I struggle with the most, is fear. You know,
Yes.
there's always seems to be something that comes in that just that just scares the daylights out of you. Uh, and sometimes you don't even know it. It's just that gut, this doesn't feel good. And I have trouble sometimes discerning whether, that's fear, or is that some kind of intuition that's saying, don't, it's just interesting. And I'm still trying to sort those things out.
So one of the ways, yeah, this can be really subtle, and that's a beautiful thing you said, right? I mean, on the most fundamental level, everything, all emotions can come down broadly to love or fear, right? If we really want to be the most general. And fear is really about, am I being seen fully, or am I in some way dying, right? When we take it down to this most fundamental level. And it's really our brain that has the hardest time with letting go, and the hardest time with pain. Our brain really gets wrapped into it. Our brain's job evolutionarily is to keep us safe, to
Mhm.
keep us safe, to keep us safe from being eaten by a tiger, keep us safe being run over by a car, whatever it is. And in Taoism, they have this translated phrase of heart wisdom, right? Heart wisdom. And our heart really, in so many traditions, right? Our heart is the place of our true self, our true spirit, our true connection and passage to the rest of the universe. It's not our brains. And the heart is the seat of our soul, using that language. And our soul really doesn't have any fear. Our soul really doesn't have any fear of death, a fear of anything, because our soul is eternal. And so, one of the ways, and again, this could be a journey for people to really understand where their heart is truly, because we don't teach that in this culture. We don't teach about our heart. We teach everything's about the brain, right?
Mhm.
Our heart's just an organ that pumps our blood, but it's that, of course, but energetically, it's so much more. So, when we heal our heart and learn about our body in that way and our energy, if the emotion is coming from our brain, it's certainly, with all like loving respect to our brain and our thoughts, and I love my brain and I love my thoughts. I have a great one. I'm very grateful. They're not true. The brain loves to trick us, or just to with the goal of keeping us safe. Our brain loves to create scenarios by which we'll pull back and be small, because the brain knows if you pull back and be small, there is safety there.
Right.
But safety is not living fully. And the heart, our soul, wants us to live fully and connect with everything. So one of the questions, if we have enough awareness in our own evolution of our healing, is this emotion, is this feeling really coming from my thoughts, or is it coming deep in my energy? And that's one of the ways that we can really tell. And if it's from our energy and it's really a message of pulling back, I would look at it a little deeper and then say, maybe this isn't right for me. But if it's clear that it's a thought, and if it's, especially if it's a looping thought, because our heart doesn't do that. If it's a looping thought of a persistent, it keeps coming back, and you maybe push it away and it comes back again, and like, that's absolutely our brain, and it's something to maybe attend to with love, but also not believe fully, for sure.
Mm. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from that explanation.
Thank
Because
you.
it is something, and I've been through the loop many, many times. And, you catch yourself in that, and you can move yourself out. There's all kinds of techniques, and I'm sure you have some, to move yourself back into your heart space and get yourself all back to where, everything's okay. It's just an experience, we're just,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then bam, it's back again.
And
Yeah.
one of the other ways that we can tell it's a thought and it might not be true, it probably isn't true, is if there's sort of if there's any reason behind it. So if there's, in whatever language it is, but if there's like, oh, this isn't safe because, and there's a list of like reasons, right? If there's a list of rational reasons in your mind that you shouldn't go in this direction, that's 100% a tell that it's the brain. The heart doesn't work that way. The heart is about this loving connection and expansion and harmony and sort of a universal consciousness. And so if there's this list of of reasons, that's a really good cue that it actually isn't real. And it isn't to say that those reasons aren't valid from a logical perspective, but I like to say, like, just like we don't in the West guide our life's path by our lymph system and how our lymph is being moved through our bodies. We don't even think about that at all. We barely even know about it in the West. It's not something we're aware of on a general daily level. Why are we guiding our lives from our brain? It's the same kind of energy. It's the same kind of organ. It just is there to keep us safe. Our kidneys are there to keep our blood harmonized and whatever, and our heart pumps our blood and our muscles help us move and our brain keeps us safe. It's not meant to guide our life. It was never meant to guide our life. Our heart and our connection to spirit is what is the true guiding force for our life, whether we believe it or not. The true guiding force for our life comes through our heart space and our connection to our eternal spirit beyond.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have some techniques that you could share with people? I mean, I know that this is a common thing in grief. You
Yeah.
you kind of cower because you've been hurt,
That's right.
and you pull in, and it's hard to open that heart back up again. It's yeah.
It's hard. And grief can be compounded across our life, especially in our culture where we're not good at unlocking it as it comes, right? In our culture, most of us have been taught to suppress our feelings, be quiet, don't speak up. And we compound that abuse over time and pack it down layer upon layer like an onion. So, that was certainly my experience. And I will share that, one of the ways that I was doing spiritual practices for years, but I still hadn't unpacked all the trauma and grief in my heart. And I wasn't able to fully connect. I would have these breakthrough experiences. I would meditate or do practices, and I would break through and have some transcendent experiences. They wouldn't last, and I would be back where I was. And really, it was doing really deep somatic therapy, somatic exercises that really unlocked my heart space for me. So, somatic exercises, somatic experiencing broadly across a whole range of modalities. I believe that those techniques broadly are really here to support us in this time when so many of us are awakening and need to feel our hearts. So, for deeper experiences like that, I really, really love all the modalities, somatic therapy and IFS and so many others that really allow us to experience the energy of our bodies beyond the story of the mind. Right. So for those who aren't familiar, in a really general, loose way, what these techniques do is that they focus on the energy and stuck energy in the body and allow us to move it out and maybe release it when we're ready without any story at all, without any story at all. And we can just let go of the tension and then we can drop in beneath that and then discover what's there. So for people, like myself, who I did this one experience, and this was in a group setting where literally I was with a practitioner in a small group, and I was literally acting out with a huge like pirate ship chain, for old boats. Like I walked down a cave into my heart space looking for my heart. And I finally found it way back in the distance of this cave. And I like pulled it out with this big chain and like brought myself in contact with my heart space for the first time, maybe as an adult. Like, so I've gone through experiences like that, which and from then on, I've had access to my heart space, and my life has just unfolded like a rocket ship of expansion and love and connection and magic and mystery in ways that I would have never expected otherwise. Once we are, though, even a little bit connected with our heart space, one of the beautiful ways that we can all connect is through our breath, right? All of us breathe every moment. And again, in our culture, and in so many cultures and so many traditions, our breath is the conduit directly into our inner self in all kinds of ways. And this is forgotten again in most of Western culture. And so just tuning in with conscious breathing, not even trying to change anything, just being aware that we're breathing, and then being aware that we're breathing with energy through our body. So one of the things I love to do with people to ground them is just to have them start breathing and then just see that breath as a channel up and down our spine, our energy column, and just see like a little ball rising and falling as we breathe in and out up and down our spinal column, all the way down to our tailbone where we're sitting on our chair, and then all the way up to the very, very top of our head as we breathe, and just connecting us. And then slowly, with every breath, we can bring some energy and color into that ball that's rising and falling with our breath. And we can expand the energy in that ball. And it could be a color. For me, it's often gold or silver or shimmering blue, but it could be whatever color appears to you. And then slowly that expands to the whole size of the chest cavity and rises and falls. And we'll do that for a while, and then we'll just drop that right into the heart space. And then as we breathe, we'll expand that out like a balloon, even past the body. We'll expand out our awareness of our energy with every breath, just a little bit. We're pumping up our energy awareness past the body. And for most people, there's a comfortable auric field, maybe around 6 to 10 feet from the body, but it can really shift and change depending on the person. And for some people who haven't done this kind of energy work, this can be a really profound experience to really move into our energy beyond the body to this realm of around, 10 feet around us and be in this bubble of love from your heart space, be in this bubble of love from your heart space. And then from there, we can take it in various directions, ground into the earth and ascend up to other realms and even expand out our bubble to the entire earth itself, et cetera. There's many things we can do from this. Um, but ultimately, then we collapse that back down into the heart space and feel all the expansive love that we created and bring that back down into in a concentrated form into our hearts. And as we do that, you know, my face right now, even just talking us through that, right? There's a joy and a glow that comes for people and an awareness of their goodness. And then when we have a conversation of healing, um, like when I do shadow work with people, when I do somatic work with people, I do this first. And then we go into, okay, now where do you want to take this in the body? Where does it want to go and travel to release what's still there in you? And then magic happens. And then magic
Mhm.
happens. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that's coming in here is to talk about shame,
Oh, yes.
because shame is like huge. um, it happens to all of us. And with grief, I find that it always comes up somewhere along the way in either a small way or a big way. It doesn't matter. It comes up and we're not able to talk about it
Yeah.
because it's shame.
It's shame, and shame is huge. And our culture, our movies, our popular culture really even reinforces this with all the stereotypes. And we're taught, so often with grief, so often we're taught to use all the vices of, alcohol and abusive behavior is one of the big ones in popular movies and TV shows, right? It's always that. Um, and even in those stories, right, people go to those vices, whatever else they might be as well, because it's shameful and you're not able to just fully be who you are, right? We don't allow it's changing now, right? These conversations are happening in the work you're doing. These conversations, these voices are coming up where it's allowing grief and shame and shadow and pain to be more normalized in our society. But for so long, like certainly in our parents' generation, it was 100% not acceptable at all. And we're still carrying that imprint that's slowly being released, I think slowly being released, like through conversations like these again. And Shame is a deep one because it takes that pain and it turns it around and uses it as a weapon against ourselves in some ways, right? Shame, we internalize it and we take the pain and grief and we layer it with shame, and then it weaponizes us deeper and wounds our heart even more. It's so pernicious in that way. And the best way to unravel the knots of shame that we have is really to start finding good friends and start telling your story in a safe places. And then realize in every case that I've ever heard, right? When you find good friends and tell your story of shame and fear and pain, what happens is that they also have some version of that same experience, of that same story, right? We're all carrying this. And so it's ironic that we try and keep it secret, because in every case that I'm aware of, when I've told a story or when my friends have told stories to me, by stories, I mean stories of their shame and pain and guilt, these really deep, vulnerable shares of pain. In every case, I'm like, oh yeah, I relate to that in this way. Also, thank you so much. It's healing for me to hear your story. I am healed by hearing your story of telling me about your shame, your pain, your guilt, your fears, because I carry a version of those too. Yeah. And as we slowly start to tell our stories, we can sort of, open the cracks of the windows and let the light in and let the shame out. And light just evaporates the shame, right? Daylight evaporates the shame, sharing the story and feeling the love that floods in, because the universe, loves us in this really beautifully neutral way, but there's love that floods into us. And when we keep it locked up, that's where it's poison. As we let it out, the light comes in and it just evaporates, but we have to be able to let it out fully from our heart with freedom. So if we tell the story as a weapon, it can be used even to create more pain in others, right? When we let it out with fear, it can become an arrow of doing more wounding. When we let it out with love and share it from our hearts, um, that's my experience. Do you feel the same, that as we share it, it just evaporates into love? It just sort of it
Yeah.
dissipates, and it just that's the anecdote, is really just being open, sharing, and finding the right people. Everyone has those good friends around them, most everyone, where they can tell a story to. And when we open our hearts, if we don't, those people will arrive for us. Absolutely. Those people will
Mhm.
appear. And finding the courage to, even when it's hard, to share the shameful, the dark secrets in ourselves, is everything. That's everything. We are communal. We're a communal species. We're communal animals, us human species. We're not meant to be alone. We're not complete in our isolation. We're complete in a tribe, in a village. And part of that is sharing these experiences is our healing. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit more about um, your experiences in the African rainforest.
Yeah. So this was years ago. I was working at the time as a tropical biologist. So I had studied in university to be an ecologist, and I went to Costa Rica my senior year of college to do a study abroad program. And I lived up in the mountains of Costa Rica and fell in love with the tropics. And so a few years later, I ended up in Africa as a field assistant for some grad students studying birds and monkeys and forest regeneration. So the birds and monkeys eat the fruits of the trees and then pass them out, and new trees grow. So collectively, we were looking at those patterns of forest regrowth in the tropical forest of Cameroon. And while we were doing that, I was living with the hunter-gatherer tribe that was there called the Baka. And they're one of the oldest um, nomadic indigenous people on the globe that haven't been displaced, although that's happening rapidly now with deforestation and modernization. And so I lived with them. We were 20 miles from the nearest village, living on little platforms in the middle of the forest. Um, and at the time I was a scientist, so I was going out every day watching the birds and monkeys and walking through doing surveys and things like that. But I would walk with one of my Baka guides who became my friends. And what they were doing was certainly supporting us and helping us. but they were collecting the mushrooms and they were looking at all the fruits, and they would see a beehive and they would get some honey, and they would point out the interconnectedness of all things, and they would tell me stories of all the trees and flowers and fruits and everything in the forest. And over time, what I realized is that, we have this idea that there's us in nature, that there's us and there's everything else. And their culture is so deeply a part of this forest that even when, like, in the evenings we would sing songs, and they would say, we're singing with the forest. We're singing with the trees, we're singing with the water. They were with everything in a way that was so simple and so integrated. It took me a while even to like understand what it was. But what it was just the oneness of all things in a way that, after several years of living with them, just permeated my understanding. Coming back here to America was sort of a big shock of awareness. And it was shortly thereafter, a couple years later, that then I came in contact with and joined a spiritual group, and actually initiated with a guru for a while and lived with him, because I was still searching for that oneness, searching for that unity, searching for this connection with all things, which I had experienced living with this group of people. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and we talk about that. I spend my summers in the Cypress Hills. It's a park with great big lodgepole pines. And I, when I walk in that park, it's like recharging a battery. It's like just reconnecting somehow with that makes my whole soul sing. It's just amazing. And I didn't know that. I mean, we'd gone many, many years when I was a kid. And as I grew up, we often went to Cyprus, and I always knew I wanted to go there, but I never really understood what was happening until, I started to awaken a little bit spiritually and started to realize that there's more to that than what meets the eye.
And the trees right now are, so we're going through this mass awakening on Earth right now. Many of us are feeling it. And one of the ways this is happening is that, again, one of the ways, there's many ways we can discuss this phenomenon, but one of the ways that resonates with me is everything is vibration again. And so the vibrational frequency of the whole Earth, this whole sphere that we're in, this whole universe is rising. And as it's rising, we're being carried up to a frequency such that we can communicate now with the trees in ways that we haven't been for generations. So the trees right now are communicating with us and wanting to reach out and just connect. There's no like mouth appearing, and they're not talking to me when I walk through the forest. But what's happening is that they're reaching out telepathically, energetically, vibrationally with us. And that calm you're experiencing is their messages of love, of harmony, of connection, of peace. And they're so happy. Going back to earlier in our conversation about how can we, when we're in grief, when we're in pain, when we're in trauma, how can we break through that and open up into our hearts? What I didn't say earlier, which I wanted to, was that, go outside and walk in nature is the other way. And our trees, the plants, the water, the sky, the rocks are all our teachers in this way. And it's becoming increasingly available to us to receive their communication, their vibrational healing. And when we acknowledge them, when I stop and acknowledge the trees, when I see an insect and stop to acknowledge it, what I receive is just this joy of recognition from them. There's a joy that comes through from them. They're so happy to be seen fully in their aliveness.
Mm.
And there's a communication then that happens, of healing, of love, of peace, of expansion. And then it can go beyond that as well, where there's more specific messages, the messages that now I receive. But initially, the experience of this connection is just really one of this global loving peace and awareness of the interconnectedness of all things. And that is the healing, because when we're all connected to the oneness, there's no separation. And if there's no separation, how is there pain or loss or any of the things that we feel, because we're all in one? We can't lose a loved one when we're in our soul and we know that we're all one united energy, for example. We do feel that when we're individuals. And this is what I'm shown about our journey on earth. This is what I've been shown by my spirit guides, is that the reason Earth is so special and the reason why there's so many people right now on Earth is because there's a waiting list of souls actually wanting to be here right now during this period of awakening. But what's happening is that on Earth, we're more separate than we are in any of the other realms I've been shown. And there's many, many, innumerable realms that our souls can experience. On Earth, it's a really uniquely isolated experience of being individually separate and cut off from our source. And the soul's journey, it's almost from this way like an amusement park, where the soul comes here to Earth and feels the illusion of separation. And then the journey is the journey back into the connection with all things. And that feeling small and isolated, and then this this beautiful rupture back into everything is this rapturous joy that some of us can experience and more of us are experiencing during our lifetimes on earth. But even for those of us who don't, it's totally fine. It happens in the passage as we pass away from earth back into the soul. We still get that experience of this expansion back into everything. And there's very few, if any, I've never been shown any other realms where we get this much isolation and so the opportunity for this much reconnection. And again, this is what I'm showing is the path of earth. And so the trees, the plants, the rocks are all showing us this reconnection, and that's the healing that we're experiencing.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. Like you can move yourself into that space. And I experience this a lot. I'll be just like, well, life is good. Life is great. I love life. And then something happens, and bam, now life is not so good.
Hard.
And you know that it's still good, that life is still good. There's that higher perspective that's letting you know that things are okay. They're totally okay. But yet your human self, I guess I would call it, is just reeling in that what you say is disconnection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, across different traditions, there's different ways to speak of this. But my Taoist teacher received a system from his teachers where there's like 12 levels of human experience, all the way from being totally disconnected to totally connected with the universe. And so, as we move through life, when we're on those first rungs of the ladder, our primary experience is that disconnection. And so, as we move through the spiritual journey, again, on the first few steps of the ladder, even if you're like open to something that something more, we're still mostly in our minds, and
Mhm.
we're still mostly our mind is mostly small and disconnected because mind doesn't have the ability actually to connect spiritually. That's our energy through our heart space and through all of our other centers. And so part of this journey is the journey from the mind to the heart and through the heart into all things. And then part of it is just, you know, through whatever tradition we choose, whatever calls to us, doing the work of raising a vibration. So, whether that's sitting in meditation, whether that's breath work, whether that's for some people, it literally can be their walks in nature with the right mindful awareness can also be the same thing. There's many paths to this, but as we continue to reinforce these higher states of vibration, we don't maybe fall as far into the separation. And certainly for some people, right now it's really popular is all the plant medicines and mushrooms and things we can also take, which what they do from one perspective is open the doors and sort of shoot us up into higher states of awareness that we can then bring those awarenesses back down to our everyday state, and they can show us that there's something more. Um, but those maybe just show us the way, and we still need to do the work of our personal healing. We need to do the work of forgiveness. We need to do the work of loving each other in every moment. We need to do the work of quieting our mind, right? So the meditation practice, right, is this practice of quieting the mind so that we can then naturally drop into our hearts, and then our hearts naturally flower into all things and allow that connection to be seen. So it's not that the connection is never there, it's
Mhm.
always there, that we don't realize it's there. And
Right.
so this in the spiritual traditions, they say like there's nowhere to go, you're already here. And that's absolutely true. We're trapped in this mind matrix where we don't see the truth. And even the spiritual teachings, right? They're called open secrets because until you sort of raise your vibration to see the words from the true scene of your heart, they might not resonate with you in a way that allows them to be the unlock that you need. And so we need to just slowly trust the process, and the process of this life is one of awakening, and the tools for all of us will appear. The tools for this awakening, especially right now, will appear. The book will cross your path. The friend will mention something in passing. You might hear a podcast and hear some words that might be useful to you, perhaps. All these things will appear to you. And if you receive them with an open heart, you will be shown what is your next step. You will be shown what is your next step always.
Yeah, and that's certainly my experience
I'm
um,
so glad.
through all of it. And it's interesting because now I know when I'm in that space of disconnect and I can feel it, I know that something's going to help me. Something's going to help me. And often I might even be a little bit impatient about the fact that it's not coming right away.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we all have, back to our, like, we all have our guides and angels around us that are wanting to help. But sometimes, I'm the same. Sometimes there's days when I'm feeling down, I'm feeling triggered, I'm feeling whatever it might be. And I can even feel the tinge of, like, I know if I walked outside, I know if I called a friend, I know if I did this thing, I would feel better, but I'm just going to put the blanket over my head and lie here and be miserable. Like, there are those days when we just choose that. And that's okay too, right? That's part of the experience of, like, sometimes I'm just going to, hole up here and feel my pain and feel whatever it might be, and that's okay. But there are always these little, do we listen? Do we listen to those little whispers, which, as we continue to listen to them, maybe they become louder and louder to a deeper knowing where we can then bring yourself into the place of healing, you know,
Right.
because this is the other truth that's really interesting, is that, we're not healed by anyone else other than ourselves. The words, the people, the healers, it's beautiful. And, I reach out to people all the time in all kinds of modalities to support my growth and opening and healing. But their doorways of information, of energy, of words, of modalities, whatever they might be, to prompt my inner shifting into where I need to be to open up to my healing. That's
Mhm.
how it is. It's really
Yeah.
amazing.
And I think a lot of healers, at first you think, okay, well, I need to heal this person, right? And that's totally not how it goes.
How can I be an instrument to guide them
Yeah.
wherever they're going, with a loving, open heart, to support this journey and just be a catalyst, perhaps, to what healing is already unfolding and happening on them. Like, for some people, right, when they reach out to me, like, the healing occurs when they even, like, decide to book the appointment,
Yeah.
right? Like the intention to heal creates the healing, and they get to me. So they write, when people book appointments with me, they write on the form, like, what their intention is and why they're coming. And then it might be a month later or whatever it is that we actually have our session. And they're like, oh yeah, well, that's actually, I worked through that now, and now I'm here, and that happens
Right.
very common. Really fun to see that, to see where they were when they booked it and then where they are when they show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. So tell me a little bit more about how people can work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to my website or my Instagram. Both are at Natural Heart Alchemy, and at Natural Heart Alchemy. And I offer a variety of types of sessions. As we talked about, I do offer what I call these Akashic Shadow sessions, where I open up the space into the world beyond with the Akashic records and also your spirit guides. And then from that space of loving spaciousness, then I drop down in with your energy and guide you to releasing some trauma and energetic blocks in your body. And those are really, really powerful sessions. Right now, I'm also doing some transitional energetic sessions for 2024 to 2025. Even I'll be doing those through the spring of 2025 to really align people for the strong energies of this coming year. Um, and then just general Akashic readings, where you can come and have questions around past lives or your soul's path or what your true aligned journey in this life is. I do a lot of work with people to just align into their truest self. Um, And then aside from that, I do have mentorships for, this on the spiritual path. And for those, just reach out to me, and those are really individualized for different people. But just supporting your awakening, and even for people who are just awakening, how do you move through this spiritual journey? And then for people who are deeper on the path, when they feel the experiences of this unity, of this non-duality, of this connection with all things, how do we stabilize and hold that, and move into this new whole frequency band more permanently, in this experience? So there's lots of ways like that. And then I'm also, in January, launching a course I'm calling The Secret of the Golden Flower, Unlocking the Secret of the Golden Flower, which is a deep exploration into self, into unlocking the flower of the heart. And it's a deep exploration into breath work and meditation and self-awareness. So all the information for that's on my website as well. So lots of
Okay.
ways.
And you're starting this course in January.
January, yeah, the middle of January. So
Okay.
go
Okay.
for in the book, The Secret of the Golden Flower is a couple hundred-year-old Taoist book, which at the time was a deep synthesis of like a 5,000-year-old tradition. And they said basically, this is everything you need to know from this whole tradition, for this unlocking of your heart and this expansion of consciousness. But even then, it's the secret of the golden flower, but it doesn't actually really tell you the secret. It sort of points the secret in these sort of obtuse ways. So it will be a fun exploration over a number of months to really work with this whole group of people to unlock these secrets together and really, visualize through our actually energy, what are these words telling us as we go through these practices through this period of time. Yeah, really powerful. So I'm really excited for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yeah. So what was your website again? Do you want to repeat?
Absolutely. No, perfect. Thank you for asking. So it's Natural Heart Alchemy is my website, Natural Heart Alchemy. And that's also my Instagram at Natural Heart Alchemy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks
Do
so
you have
much.
any advice, parting words you want to share before we go?
Yeah, I just want to, double down and reiterate that all of us, no matter what we're going through, no matter, right now, if we're hearing this because we're in pain, we're in grief, we're in trauma, we're healing from some really difficult experiences, all of us are surrounded by this loving universe with so many guides, so much support, so much help. And the way that we can all access it is really, again, just to open our hearts and reach up with longing to, even if you don't know whatever it is, just to the universe at large, to God, to the world beyond, to any of it. Just reach out and ask from your heart with this longing of like, please guide me, support me. I need some help. I'm hurting right now. And that longing and that, deep humility of connection, is what really unlocks this connection to spirit, and really, and everyone that I know in my own journey as well, like everything changes once we really approach the universe from this deep humility and longing of connection and change. And the loving universe will appear in all kinds of forms for you, through friends, through angels showing up, through hearing the trees, however it is for you. And your life will change, and your life will change in ways that are more magnificent than you could ever imagine. Yeah, this is true for everyone. This is true for everyone.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What a wonderful way to wrap this up. It has been absolutely delightful to meet you. And I think you've imparted a lot of wisdom here.
Mhm.
And
Thank you
so
so much.
I'm anxious for people to be able to go and check out more about you and maybe enroll in your class or in some of your sessions. I think that would be great. So thank you again.
Thank you
And
so much. It's been a joy to speak with you today.
yeah,
Yeah.
and thanks everyone for listening. And bye for now.